Hey everyone, and welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Make sure to leave a like on this video down below and subscribe. My name is Alvin. I lean right on most issues, and I'll be representing the Republican side.
My name is Luke. I lean left on most issues, and I'll be representing the Democratic side. Hey guys, so in this video, we're covering some big news here. Um, just recently, Donald Trump has been convicted of 34 felony counts of falsifying records. So, yeah.
Yeah, so this is probably the biggest news in the campaign for months now for the presidential election. Um, and Trump has been found guilty by a jury of his peers. There is a lot of dispute on the trial itself, on whether the trial was just, on whether justice was served or not. But we want to remind you guys that this upcoming presidential election is extremely close. In our past projections, we had Trump barely edging the election over Biden, 270 to 260 electoral votes, and now things could change.
Yeah, so I guess the first things first in this video, we're going to be talking about the case itself and our opinions of it. Then we're going to go more into the potential impacts this can have on the election, Trump's potential punishments, and yeah, so on. So I guess I'll start here with the case itself. So essentially, during the early days of Trump's presidency, he falsified business records, essentially to cover up uh, uh, 20 payments for an affair he had with porn actress Stormy Daniels. Uh, yeah, so a bit salacious there,
Yeah.
but yeah. So essentially, instead of taking money out of his business to just pay the actress, he 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 falsely recorded these payments as legal fees, which you're not allowed to do, and they weren't even like a legal defense for the business itself. So yeah, Trump did that, and the what that would ordinarily be a misdemeanor, but in this case, it was a felony because the prosecution managed to prove that he did this in an attempt to hide a broader conspiracy to influence the 2016 election, and they corroborated, like they supported this with plenty of evidence of Trump having calls with Michael Cohen and people close to Trump like David Pecker and a whole sort of effort through the National Enquirer to silence negative cases against Trump in the 2016 election. And with all that, kind of pushing all that evidence forward, the prosecution managed to get the jury to unanimously decide that Trump was guilty. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think something to note there, I think there are a lot of ways I could say that this case is somewhat weak. First of all, I think you failed to mention that um, Trump had someone who he called his personal lawyer, someone he called his fixer, Michael Cohen, who was the star witness in this case because he was the one that sort of paid off Stormy Daniels here. And Trump had to reimburse him because, I don't think Michael Cohen just has $130,000 lying around, right? So I think it's sort of, you can definitely see how Trump would have written this off as a legal expense, considering that, this is a hush money payment, right? So it's sort of like, you know, some could call it a non-disclosure agreement, some could call it a settlement, right? To basically get this woman to not say anything, not speak. And so it's sort of a legal expense. You're paying your personal lawyer to reimburse her. So I don't really know what you're supposed to write this off as. The case itself as well was also sort of weak because there were a lot of weak parts considering that the prosecution was trying to say that this was a conspiracy to sort of affect the 2016 election, but you falsified the business records in 2017, so I don't understand how they sort of went back in time and affected the 2016 election, because the payments were already done, and that part is completely legal. What they're alleging is illegal are the business records, and those were done in 2017, so I don't know how they would affect the 2016 campaign. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
the case in itself was not that strong. I don't think it was beyond a reasonable doubt, but there were definitely, surveys of of potential people on whether they think he's guilty or not guilty. I think this case was very public before it was tried, and the biggest determining factor on whether you think Trump is guilty or not is which way you'd vote. And so, with this case being tried in Manhattan, which is very deep blue, I think Trump was honestly not going to survive this case in
Uh,
court.
okay, so I gotta kind of respond to that. So let me break down what you said. Okay, let me start with where I agree with you. I do agree that this is the weakest case against Trump of all the four
Definitely.
against Trump, and yeah, I think we could both agree on that. Like, I do think it is like I believe like I mean the jury believes obviously themselves that Trump broke the law, and it is evident that he broke the law in some capacity in this case. And but I will say I think the prosecution's argument is it is pretty targeted. Like I think it they are correctly applying the law here. But
Eh,
you know, they are putting it together like in a pretty complex way, and it feels like they were kind of grasping at straws, looking to convict Trump for something. But yeah, like I think there's no doubt he broke the law, but you know, like I think that they kind of went out on a limb in the way they did it. But you know, like okay, so, in terms of the rest of the things you said, I think it is pretty like hard and clear that Trump at least that Trump falsified business records. Like he signed those checks and this guy runs a business. It's not like like he knows these aren't like legitimate legal fees. Like this wasn't like work Cohen did on behalf of the business. This is falsifying business records. So like this isn't work for his business. This is like personal stuff. Like bribing someone to stay quiet. That's personal stuff. That isn't a business expense. That isn't like through the Trump organization. So the falsifying records thing is evident. Like they have him down, dead to rights on that. But the the main issue with the case, the main area where I think you can make a legitimate argument against the case, isn't in the fact that he falsified records, isn't in the fact that he had a conspiracy. There was a conspiracy in the to silence salacious and bad stories against Trump in the 2016 elections. The prosecution had plenty of evidence for both of those offenses, but those offenses alone are misdemeanors. The part that's a felony is falsifying business records in order to conceal another crime. Now that part, like that middle
yeah.
section, is the section that matters because that's what makes it a felony. So I mean, like that part is supported by less evidence than the rest. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, it was enough to convince a jury. So I'm not saying like it like it might not have been 100% as opposed to the other two parts, but yeah, sure, maybe you can make it a part for that weak sort of middle area. But I will say it is pretty heavily supported because you have a guy on the inside, Michael Cohen, commenting against Trump here. You have evidence from a meeting at the time between Michael Cohen and Donald Trump, like through Alan Weisselberg's notes. So and Trump has a clear motive to want to hide something so salacious. So those three things of evidence kind of tie the whole thing together. And so I think if you're going to make an argument, make the argument there. But the other two sections, like those like him falsifying records, like that's beyond a shadow of a doubt. And the jury ruled in that fashion.
I do think that okay, it's somewhat strong that he did falsify business records, but like you said, that's a misdemeanor, and also the statute of limitations, which in America is how long you can prosecute someone for a crime after it happened, would have been over. So they had to find something to still prosecute him right now, and so they had to find a secondary crime that he falsified business records in order to complete. Now, I think that the bribe itself definitely affected the election outcome, right? However, I don't think that you can prove that the falsifying records part affected the 2016 election, considering that he falsified the records in 2017, right? So that part to me really doesn't make any sense. I will say
Uh,
though,
uh, okay, it was just to
what
hide a secondary. Like the only thing that the prosecution had to
yeah,
prove was it was hiding a
but
secondary crime, regardless of
but
the time that crime was committed.
yeah, but
So
okay, but the prosecution was saying that the crime was affecting the 2016 election, right?
Yes.
Defrauding the election, right?
Yes.
Now, I
Yes.
don't think that the falsifying business records could have defrauded the election because the business records were
You're
falsified
you're
after
you
the election,
You're right. You're right.
right?
But
So
they
how
only
does
had to
that
prove.
work?
Okay, they only had to prove they were hiding a sec. The only thing again, I'm going to restate it. The only thing the prosecution had to prove was it was an attempt to hide a secondary crime, regardless of when that crime occurred. And they did that. And also, on a separate note, like
I don't think it could.
the idea that this jury, like, was incredibly biased, like I don't fully buy it. We've had like trial by jury for 250 years in this country. It's not suddenly going to go wrong for this one specific case. And also, I should note that they sifted through dozens and dozens of jurors to 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 find people who didn't have strong opinions about people like Michael Cohen and obviously Donald Trump at the center of this case. And I would also note, like, I mean, we should have had this up for the video. I'm just thinking about it now. Like in a review of the jurors by the New York Times, and like the sources they use, like obviously there was a lot of people using the New York Times, the cases in New York, but there was also like a decent diversity of in the where people got their information, like social media. There was even a juror who got their news from Truth Social, Trump's social media app. So the idea that it was like our justice system is suddenly falling apart, I think is kind of preposterous.
I don't think it's suddenly falling apart, but if you try Biden, you try Hunter Biden's gun case, which, started today. If you try that in the middle of Alabama, you're gonna get a conviction, right? Like I just don't see
I think
how this.
regardless, you're gonna get a conviction.
Okay,
I mean,
okay.
these
Okay,
people
but what
like
I'm saying is that these people are definitely have an opinion about Trump, right? Like you don't go into this
maybe
having no opinion about him, and you're in a district that voted for Biden by 90% plus, right? So,
again, but like not every American is that politically engaged. Like,
no,
uh,
but
uh,
in New
I
York
think they
City.
might have some opinions, but like how strong could they for like
Okay,
the voter who knows nothing about politics? I don't doubt they have that strong.
I still am not convinced that his falsifying records could have affected the election, considering they were after the election. But I digress. We do have to move on
You're
to
right. Okay,
to
let's
the
look at the
to how it would affect the 2024 election. This is one of the
absolutely right. Yeah.
polls conducted right before the conviction, right? May 21st through 31st, which is a little after, but mainly before the conviction happened, before the news dropped. And most people say that it will make no difference on if we're looking at the orange here because he was found guilty. Okay. So
Hmm.
looking at the orange numbers, not the purple numbers, 2/3 of voters said that they would not, basically they won't care. It's a
Yeah.
wash.
I mean,
17% are less likely to vote for Trump, and 15% are more likely to vote for Trump. So
mm,
2% more less likely to vote for Trump, which 2%, that could be a lot. It is within the margin of error though, right?
yeah.
And I think more notably, a solid portion of this 2% is independents, the vote that will really swing the election. I also want to point out one more poll that was right after the conviction by Reuters Ipsos, where, after Trump did get convicted, would you be less likely, more likely, or no difference um
Mm,
to uh to vote for him? And like I pointed out right here, most of the important numbers here are on the right, the independent voters, because obviously Democrats were never going to vote for Trump. I mean,
yeah.
whoever this 3% is kind of funny. But
Yeah.
more likely to vote. But Republicans, right? This is obvious, right? We look at the independents, so 10% gap, that can be very, very big, especially when independents could make up 30-40% of voters in a state, right? That could be 3 to 4% difference. Take it away, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, I think the polls are right here. I think this is primarily going to affect, like, in terms of changing minds, this is primarily going to affect independent voters who just can't really bring themselves to vote for a convicted felon. Um, and like I think that makes sense. Like I think this polling makes perfectly good sense. Like Democrats were never going to vote for Trump in the first place. Like and Republicans and Republicans being more likely to vote for Trump, like as you see in this, like the 34% of Republicans more likely to vote for Trump in the event of conviction, we're probably going to vote for Trump anyway. Um, so
Correct.
I
Yeah.
yeah, I just don't really think it matters on that front. On the front where it might matter, um, like in terms of like partisans, like in particular Republicans, is fundraising because I think Trump has done a great job of fundraising off his conviction among Republicans. So I think it's like there's wins and losses here. Like I think Trump had like a record fundraising in the days after the conviction, but also I think he's going to lose some independent voters. And
Yeah.
you know, he's not going to lose a lot of them, but in an election that's going like as we had in our prior in our current prediction, like it being really close, an election that like on the margins, like that can matter like a decent
I
amount,
agree.
enough to even swing the
Yeah.
election.
I also want to point out the polls on the election itself here. I believe there have been three polls that have been conducted after or on the date of the conviction, which is Morning Consult, Forbes, Harris, and Reuters Ipsos. So the ones that start on May 30th or later, because the other ones
Hmm.
could have started before the conviction, right? The conviction was on the 30th. And so we look at Morning Consult now it's Biden +1. We look over here on the past Morning Consult poll right before that, and you see Trump +2. But if you look at it, it's really only Biden gaining 3 points. Trump didn't actually lose any support in this poll. So that is
True.
something you want to know. Now, next, you could look at Forbes, Harris. I'm not actually sure how far back you have to go. Um, I can't really find it right now.
Uh,
I think it might be it actually might just be this one back here, but at where they had it as a tie. Where now Trump is +2, so don't really know where you get this from. Then you also have the Reuters Ipsos poll where now Biden is leading +2. In the last Reuters poll, it was a tie. Where Biden has gained 1 point and Trump has lost one, but that also could be within the margin of error. So,
yeah,
these
definitely.
one poll moving to the right, two polls moving to the left by tiny amounts. It sort of feels like a wash here, maybe a little effect for Biden, but I feel like in a few months it might just, go back to however it would have been. I want to also point out the betting odds, which initially had Trump dropping down lower than Biden, but now he has recovered straight back
Hmm.
to being the favorite again. And I also want to point out what you said about fundraising. So I actually did pull up these numbers. Now let's first look at the numbers pre-conviction. So this is in April 2024. So this is the month before the conviction, where
Hmm.
Biden had a massive fundraising lead over Trump of $40 million. You also had him spending way more up to this point, raising a lot more in April, right? And so Biden had a huge cash advantage. However, Trump had a record $141 million haul in May. Biden has not announced how much he has raised in May yet. I'm assuming that means it's not that great, right? He would have definitely announced it if it was good.
Hmm.
But yeah, Trump has raised 141 million. I think at that point he has completely turned the tables on the cash advantage, raising 141 million because Biden would have to raise at least $100 million or so to actually um, level the playing field. And in April, he raised 24.2 million. So he would have to quadruple what he raised in April to keep up with Trump, which could definitely help Trump a lot in swing states here.
Yeah. Um, yeah, we're gonna have to see. I mean, as I said before, that cash is definitely going to help Trump. Um, especially like, I mean, I think Biden has had the slight cash advantage for the last couple of months, and I think yeah, Trump is going to be. He might even close that gap, like with the aftermath of the conviction. But also, I do believe like realistically, like him becoming a convicted felon and Democrats like having that literally like free branding like against him. Like I swear, I bet like in every Biden ad we're gonna see convicted felon Donald Trump. So I think just using that and wielding that
Yeah, it's
against him
true.
is going to be very powerful on the Democrats' part, especially at convincing people who may be like kind of on the fence. Um, so yeah, like I mean, I guess we'll have to see. I mean, the polling right now, I mean, it's kind of really not showing much of any change, like in the post-conviction polls. But yeah, we're gonna really have to see as we get closer. Like, does this have any impact? Is this just a wash? Um, and yeah.
Yeah, we definitely do have to see more polls come out. It is only the first real weekday, after the conviction because, pollsters don't really work on the weekends. So you have Thursday, Friday, Monday, and it's Monday right now. So the conviction was on Thursday. So the only polls out are Thursday, Friday, or Friday polls, which pollsters don't actually work that hard on Friday either. Just speaking from experience, right? So this week is gonna be the big week. And then also just over the next few months, a lot more could change, right? Because we're still 5 months out from the election. Also, want to briefly touch on what could happen to Trump post conviction, and sentencing happens in a month and 8 days on
Yep.
July 11th, 2024, where Trump could face possible jail time among other punishments such as probation, community service, I guess technically house arrest. You have some weird combinations of jail and probation. And most likely he's not going to get jail time. I think if he does, that would be pretty shocking. And might give him even more ammunition against, what he calls a biased judge. So this could be really interesting. I
Yeah.
mean, I
Uh,
don't know what he's gonna get, but that's gonna be big. It's gonna put the story back in the news yet again.
yeah, I mean, personally, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. He's probably not getting jail time here. Like for this kind of crime, I think I read an article that like 10% of people charged with this crime get jail time, and usually you'd have to do that crime, like have to falsify business records beforehand and then commit it again, and then if after that second time you'd get jail
Yeah.
time.
First time
Um,
offender, I don't
it's
think
rare. It's
so.
super rare. So he'll he'll probably get off with like probation, which like really isn't much of anything, or maybe service, which would kind of be funny. Um, but I mean, house arrest I think is probably the most serious that is on the table. I've read like another possibility of him only going to jail on like weekends, which is like a weird like alternative like thing that
That's
punishment.
really
I,
weird. I
I
don't
I I
know
don't
about that.
think that I'm not sure that would happen. But yeah, I guess house arrest would probably be the worst thing on the table because he wouldn't like it would be harder to campaign. Um but yeah, like I don't really see much of any serious like punishment coming out of this. Like yeah,
I agree. I feel like if he does get that, that would be a little corrupt on the justice system, right? Because normal first offenders do not get jail time. So if he did that, that would definitely show some cracks in the bias of the judge, and because it's just so hard to see him getting jail time here with this lowest level felony, first
yeah, it's
time
an E-class
offender.
felony.
It's just
It's
it's
not gonna
just
happen.
so hard. This is
Yeah.
on the same level as like, tiny, tiny crimes, right? Because he didn't violently harm anyone, right? So that's the biggest thing. He's not really gonna be a repeat offender, right?
Yeah.
So there's no
It's
point in jail. There's no point jailing him. I mean,
yeah,
that
at the
would
end of the
be
day,
ridiculous.
it's an E-class felony. So he like for this particular case, he's probably not going to jail. If I was Trump, I'd be far more worried about the three other cases that are going to be trudging his way. And those I think are much more likely he gets jail time. This one, not so much. But yeah, you never know. Maybe we'll be surprised. Uh,
Mm,
but yeah, I think he's getting off. He's gonna get off pretty fine in terms of like a punishment. And yeah.
yeah, so I guess that's about it from us, right?
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for watching, and remember to like, subscribe, comment down below, share this video with your friends, and thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.
See you guys.